Guys, I've got one here that you are not going to want to miss. This is one of the most informational episodes as far as the mechanics of shooting a bow, as far as learning the basics of shooting a bow, as far as instructing somebody. Sometimes it's really hard to coach somebody who's just now getting into archery, somebody who, it's all brand new to them and they have no idea what they're doing. That can be a difficult thing. And so we talked through, how to coach somebody. Maybe you're getting your kid into archery and you really want to, help them develop a good shot. Maybe they're, for me, it's a young man by the name of Logan in church, and we're about to start teaching Logan how to shoot a bow. And so I just wanted to tackle, how do you take somebody who's never shot a bow and develop them into being a successful archer? And so in order to do that, there's only one way you can go, and that's Mr. Tom Clum, Solid Archery Mechanics, RMS gear. Tom is absolutely a phenomenal archery instructor. He's my personal coach. I've spent a couple times with him in Denver, just receiving coaching and trying to develop, myself to be a better archer and to have better mechanics and to shoot better. Tom's just phenomenal, and he articulates in a way that is so easy to understand. And so we talked through instructing somebody who's never had any archery experience and how to teach them how to shoot a bow. Now, the good part about how this episode is laid out is that if you are that beginning archer, and you're just now bought your first bow, you've never shot a bow before, you're going to learn a whole lot from Tom. He literally walks through in the video. So if you're listening to this, I would highly encourage you to watch this episode because Tom shows a whole lot of things. But you're going to learn how to develop a shot right here by Tom. But also, if you've been an archer for your entire life, you're going to hear some things and be like, maybe I do need to think about that. We kind of talk about some things that we've noticed that even guys who have shot their entire life, you've shot a compound your entire life, some things that you might be doing wrong. And so you're going to learn something here, whether you are an elite level shooter or whether you're picking up your bow for your first time. But where I think this episode is going to be most helpful is to the person who wants to be able to coach and instruct and help new bow hunters and new archers. Guys, it is a really good episode. Tom is one of my favorite people to talk archery with, so I would highly encourage you not to miss this one. Guys, as always, this episode is brought to you by our phenomenal friends over at ScentLock. But guys, let's dive in with Mr. Tom and let's learn a whole lot about archery mechanics.
With over 90 years of innovation, Bear Archery continues pushing toward the goal of founder Fred Bear, making archery accessible for all. Fred believed the history of the bow and arrow were the history of mankind, and everyone should immerse themselves in the outdoor experience. Welcome to the Bear Archery Podcast, where the mission is simple: to hunt, grow, and inspire others.
Guys, there's one fabric that if you're not wearing, you absolutely should be. It's a magic fabric. It changes everything about the way you layer, everything about the way you dress, everything about the way you hunt, and that is merino wool. I couldn't even begin to tell you all of the benefits of merino wool, and I'm going to miss some for sure. But guys, whether it's summer or whether it's winter, this is going to keep you cool in the summer. It's moisture wicking. It's going to pull the moisture away from your body, but it's also going to hold your heat in the winter. It is antimicrobial. It doesn't smell. It doesn't hold scent like other fabrics does. So if you're out on a 5-day hunt, you don't have access to a washer, this is not going to hold your scent. It's not going to get stinky and nasty. It's also quick drying. You can hang this up in your tent. You can hang it up on a clothesline. It's going to dry really quick. But the coolest part about merino, in my opinion, is that when it gets wet, it still maintains its warmth properties. So if there's a light rain or a snow and this gets wet, it's still going to keep me warm. There's no itch. It's non-allergenic. It's an amazing fabric. Minus 33. I stumbled upon minus 33 by accident. I was on backcountry.com and they were having a blowout sale. I needed some new merino for a hunt that was coming up. And so I I dove in, I bought it. And when I got it, it was the softest, best merino I have ever felt in my entire life. I've not worn anything but minus 33 socks for everyday life, whether I'm hunting, hiking, or just, out for the day. I haven't worn anything but minus 33 socks in over a year and a half. Every single day I'm wearing their underwear. Every single time I'm out hunting, whether it's 100 or whether it's 5, I'm wearing some sort of beanie to cover up my chrome dome and to keep that covered up and warm or cool, whether if it's in the summer. But also that UV protectant. I like to wear it in the summer. Guys, minus 33 does merino, in my opinion, better than anybody else does it. Go check out minus 33 for all your merino wool. And if you haven't ever tried merino, guys, you are missing out. It will change the way you layer. It will change the way you hunt. Go check out merino wool and go check out minus 33.
So what I thought we could walk through is I've got a young man in my youth group. And just kind of, he's my biggest fan, man. Listens to every episode and asks me about every episode, and really just wanted to get a bow. And he's special needs, but he's just really been obsessed with archery and getting a bow.
Yeah.
And so his parents called me and said, "Hey, we're going to get Logan a bow. Can you meet us down at the shop? We'll pick one out, whatever."
Nice.
And then we'll surprise him. So it's kind of a fun story. I said, "Yeah, just tell him I need to meet with him Wednesday night before church." And we had just got back from church camp.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, just tell him that I found out that he did some things at church camp that I need to talk to him about. Now, Logan's a very sweet, tenderhearted kid. And so, obviously he didn't do anything to be in trouble for, but I just said, just tell him that I found out about some things at camp that we need to talk to him about. And so he comes in like all nervous and,
oh yeah.
And I said, "Logan, listen, and I was being as serious as I could. And I said, could you guys shut the door behind you as they come into my office at the church?"
You're setting him up to be
really
nervous.
And I said, "Logan, I found out about some things at camp
Yeah.
that was said, and some inappropriate things that were said at camp." And he didn't even argue. He was just like, "Okay, yeah, okay." And then I'm like, "Wait a second. Well, I was kidding, but you're not even arguing with me. So what was it that you were saying at camp that you shouldn't have been saying?" Anyways. And so I said, "Well, hey," and then we surprised him with the bow. And so then I just started thinking about, the process of teaching somebody, and the beauty of your course is the beauty of,
Mm-hmm.
of the Solid Archery Mechanics is that no matter where you're at in your shooting, you can grow from it. Whether you've been shooting for decades or whether you're just now starting, there's something you can learn from it. But I think
you're talking about the main course, or if you, because I don't know if you're familiar with the basics course or if that's what you're looking at.
I've taken the basics course.
Okay, great.
Now, but here's where I feel like, Tom, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but social media and YouTube and the archery world has kind of taken this shift to now be like, they're putting out 401 content. They're putting out high level content for guys that, have been shooting their entire lives and they want to go to that next level. But sometimes I feel like we're missing the beginner. And so I just want to talk through, how would you coach a young kid or somebody that's just never shot a bow? What are the first steps you're going to take to help teach them archery? Like walk me through that process that you would go through with somebody.
All right. So, I started calculating it once, and the kind of people that come in that want to dip their toe in the water, check archery out. And I was kind of calculating how many people I've worked with over the last 20 years that were brand new to archery, never seen it before. And like, how many introduction lessons have I given? And I figured it was somewhere around 3,000, right? Just a crazy number of folks that I've worked with that are brand new to the sport, want to check it out. And over that period of time in 20 years and working with so many people that are brand new to the sport or just giving an introduction to the sport with, you kind of develop a sense of what works and what they need.
Yeah,
And so
for sure.
in all honesty, I feel qualified to answer your questions. And I'd like to go over with you like the elements that I think a first-time lesson should get. Basically, someone who's never handled a bow needs some time with this thing in their hands and needs to shoot some arrows. Because if you've really never handled one to begin with, there's going to be a bunch of clumsiness with this tool that you have in your hand at first.
Yeah.
And you just got to learn to get the arrow on the string. And that can be really an odd thing. And I'll teach simple ways to do that more easily. But let's just kind of go back to the introduction lesson for a second here. I started to go off on a little rabbit hole, and I better not do that. An introductory lesson, I want to tell them the main components in a shot. I'm not going to overcomplicate things, but I am going to give them some pretty high level information in the mix of this thing that we want, this lesson that we want to simplify. We need a foundation, right?
Right.
So I'm going to talk about like 3 main jobs in an archery shot. The first main job, if we were going to simplify, the sequence that we go through in shooting an arrow, the first main job is going to be to build a holding position. And maybe I can get away. I want to like a whole thing from, front to back. I want to build a holding position. Once that job done, the foundation that we shoot from, most important position in archery, once that job is done, we need to learn how to aim the bow. And then that third job is how do we get rid of this string in a manner that's going to create accuracy and what they don't know yet, prevent them from repetitive motion injuries. And what they don't know yet, keep them from kind of flinching, because the bow gives you a little shock. It never hurts, right? But those are things that we kind of get into at a deeper level later on. But really what we're working on first is we kind of leave out that middle job at first, because what we really need to do at first is to put their talent in a repeatable process. We need to replicate a draw length. We need to replicate how far this string comes back every single time, and the body positions that create a draw length that's the same every time. We need to learn to get rid of the string without moving the bow around, without moving the aim around, from a myriad of different causes. We need to have a process first. We need to have a repeatable process, because before we can shoot the bow the same way every time, aim means nothing. There's no feedback from where the arrow hits if you don't shoot the arrow in the same way every time. So it's all process oriented at first, and then once we get a process of this person shooting an arrow in the same way every time and repeating a position right here and repeating a draw length, and then getting rid of the string without moving things around or flinching to the bow, then we add an aim. And then we add the concepts of what an aim's all about. And then we add an aim to this process. And if this process is consistent, whatever aim we put on the target is going to create a group. Now, whatever aim they put on the target might create a high group or a right side group or a left side group, or, et cetera. And so then we teach the archer how to adjust that group. Obviously, it's high or low. By the way, I'm going to teach them to aim off of the tip of the arrow. So, and a gap method. We can go more into that in a bit. But if it's high or low, that's really easy. We just need to raise the point at which we put the arrow that equates to hitting the bullseye at that range. If it's left or right, a little more complicated issues, not rocket science, but we need to teach them. So a right-handed archer, typically we're going to have a group to the left. If that group isn't in the middle for a right-handed archery, almost always that group is going to be on the left side. And they're going to go, why? And it's very simple. When we anchor the bow, the anchor's generally always on the side of the face. And depending where they set up correctly, whether the string's forward or the string's back, it's going to change where the string is as far as the alignment to their eye. So if they have a deep side of face anchor and it comes out to the side of the face here, that string is going to be on the right side of the eye. So if you think about it, from from the place where the handle is, and the string's on the right side of the arrow is going to be pitching to their left a little bit. If the string's right in the middle of their eye, well, then their eye is going to be aligned with the string and the arrow to the bullseye. But for most people, and I'll explain the dimensions later, the string's going to be to the right side of their eye. So if they hold the bow straight up and down, and the arrow's got this little pitch to the left, and they put the arrow in alignment, the arrow tip in alignment with the bullseye, it's going to hit left of the bullseye. Did I explain that clear enough?
Yeah, no, for sure.
And I've got a little 7-pound bow I can draw and kind of demonstrate that. So then we need to learn that in order to get the eye in line with, so we can't get the eye in line with the string because their side of face anchor, it might pull the string to the left side of their eye, right? Then we still have to get the eye aligned to the arrow to the bullseye. And so it's a very simple thing. You see that most traditional archers shoot a canted bow or a bow that's leaned over to the side. Let me get my demonstration bow. I might have to move my computer in my box away a little bit. Let's get set up a little better, Dylan.
Now this will, it will expand to be your full screen once we edit the video.
So what you notice is that instead of a person having a bow straight up and down, a lot of times they have to tilt the bow and the head over. All right. What that does is it moves this canted or slightly tilted arrow and it rolls it over right under the eye. The handle of the bow is right here. So this is the point at which it pivots left or right. The arrow sits on a shelf or on a rest that's above the pivot point. So when this bow pivots over, if I'll kind of line this rest right with my nose and I'll pivot this bow over, you'll see that the pivot point is not changing. This is staying right under my chin. But as I tip the bow over, the arrow moves to the right. See what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And so when we cant the bow, even when we take our head with the bow, so we want to take the head and the bow together, we want to lean this over together, that arrow will come over and into alignment with our eye. And so that's what we're looking for. We're looking for eye, arrow to bullseye alignment. And that's specifically how we move that group that's on the left over into the right in line with the bullseye. So when we get into aiming, so I kind of jumped ahead to aiming there because we got on that subject, but that's part of the aiming lesson.
Yeah. So what are you using? Because obviously, I mean, if somebody shows up and they've never shot before and they bought a 45, 50-pound recurve, because,
that's what you should hunt with, and that's what
what you should hunt with. Bows are expensive. They can't afford to buy, 4 different bows to work their way up. Which, just so everybody knows, that's why I encourage new beginners to start with a takedown. At least start with a takedown. That way you can buy new limbs and work your way up without having to buy a whole new bow. But if somebody shows up and they've got a 45, 50-pound bow, it's really hard to learn all that stuff on a 50, 45-pound bow. So what kind of tools, what kind of exercises, what kind of things are you using? Which I remember a couple little tricks that you used on me when I was there. But what are you using to really build that structure of that shot? If all they have is a 45, 50-pound bow, that, is going to be really hard to teach them all of that stuff on that heavy of a bow, especially if they've never shot before.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is kind of a tough answer. Most of the time, there's no way they can learn a proper shot with that bow.
Right.
There's literally no way that they can learn the positions and movement involved in a great archery shot with that bow. Because you got to remember, we're under a load that compresses our body together from the tip of the elbow over here to the bow hand. We're getting squished together. And so, first of all, most people are going to draw this bow and they're going to really struggle with a 45-pound bow. And they may not be able to get there. Well, we're going to talk about alignment. They may not be able to get here. Let's see they're able to get here. Let's scoot to the right. And they can get here. but they can't get to here. Let me give you a different angle.
Yeah.
They can't develop alignment, so to speak. They can get to here because their shoulders are really strong, but they can't get to here. Could you see that, Dylan?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when we get from here to here, we're actually using our back muscles, right? And those are the muscles we want to use primarily throughout the shot because we want to protect the health of this shoulder. And so we don't want a repetitive motion injury. We don't want a repetitive motion strains where you can't shoot because you literally kind of strained your shoulder to the point of a minor injury. And that happens super commonly because we get excited about this and it is fun and we keep shooting and shooting and shooting and we literally cause a strain. We cause a little of that tissue to kind of stretch apart and we create a lot of pain. Let me continue here. When we're under that compressive load, there are certain things that happen to us structurally. So when we build this holding position, one of the things we're going to talk about, some of the components to a good holding position, is we want these shoulders low and level. We want an alignment between this shoulder to the front hand. We're going to twist our body around until we hit a soft end range of movement. By the way, this is one of the ways we replicate our draw length.
Yeah.
So we replicate our draw length with this action of turning sideways to a soft end of range of movement. All right. And I call it soft because you can go further, but look what happens to the front shoulder when I do it. It starts rising and going forward and it comes into a position where we're stretching all these tissues. But that's a major factor in replicating your draw length is how you align your shoulders to your front hand.
And I remember that like it was yesterday. And it works to keep your shoulder down. It packs your shoulder down when you do that. And I remember like it was yesterday when I was shooting with you and you're like, man, that shoulder's creeping up a little bit. Just start your draw cycle by pushing towards the target and rotating away from it. And start that should just for the split second before your draw cycle. And now I do it every time.
To get to here.
Yep.
To get to here and add a little rotation like that and shove your shoulder down.
Yep.
That little movement of I'm not pulling on the string. That little movement of the shoulders are down and pushing that right to a spot towards the floor and sucking that shoulder down and then twisting your body a little bit.
Locks it
that little
place.
Movement loads up the muscles low here that pull the shoulder down.
Yeah.
And then we keep that movement and we raise the bow up and see how the shoulder, my hands may come up, but that shoulder stays down. Even if my hands are above my head, that shoulder stays down. And then we can come into that position for holding.
I also just want to encourage you, like, and again, I don't want to get too far off the topic of teaching a beginner, but I do want to make note because Tom has mentioned, shoulder health and keeping your shoulders healthy so you can continue to shoot. And I used to be that guy, a young kid that nothing hurt. And I was just like, what are you talking about, dude? I could shoot for decades. And just recently, every time I would draw my bow, and I did a podcast with Preston Ward over it. So I would highly encourage you, if you have any shoulder injury at all, jump back and listen to that episode with Preston Ward because it is incredibly informational and got rid of my shoulder pain immediately. But I FaceTimed him and, I showed him my draw cycle and everything. He's like, dude, it looks like you're drawing really well. Looks like you're drawing, perfect form, keeping everything aligned. But probably what has happened is once you get tired, once you've shot 100 arrows for the day and you start to get tired, you probably start to get a little sloppy and you've just developed a little pinch in your shoulder. But it got so bad that I couldn't draw my bow back at all. Now I couldn't replicate this pain whatsoever in doing anything else other than shooting a bow. I could do any form of workout, no shoulder workouts or anything hurt the shoulder except for when I shot my bow. And so for somebody who shoots every day, that was frustrating. And so guys, I just want to encourage you, like, if you haven't faced shoulder injury, like, praise God, but also if you don't consider alignment and how you're holding and all of these things that Tom talks about, it can very, very easily happen to the point where you're no longer shooting your bow. So I would definitely take note of what Tom is talking about and not just blaze over that. Like, my shoulder doesn't hurt, I'm fine. Well, it very well could one day. So listen to these things. So Tom, when teaching a beginner, and I don't want to get away from that, because again, I feel like so many times we focus on the 401 rather than you've never shot a bow. Where do we start from? What differences now? I was kind of making note at first, but then we went for a long time before I asked the question. What differences, or what are you doing differently if somebody comes to you with a compound versus a recurve? Because you talked about, basically everything in your first steps would be the same. Even the release, you want to teach them how to execute a good release, whether they're shooting a thumb button, whether they're shooting a wrist strap, you still have to execute a good release. So, but where does the beginning steps start? If somebody comes to you with a compound, what are the beginning steps look like to develop that person to be a shooter?
Okay, so I'm going to make a statement first that drives the old trad guys crazy.
Do it. I love
But
that.
a bow is a bow. The positions and movements we make with a traditional bow and a compound bow are 98% the same.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't change that much. The thing with a compound bow is once you get it over that hump and it drops into the cams roll over and then the cables are holding the weight of the bow, you're only holding 20% of the compressive load of that bow. That's the main difference. So if I have a 50-pound recurve at my 28-inch draw, I've got 50 pounds on these fingers right here, and I'm getting squished together by 50 pounds. Once I get this 50 pounds locked over and it drops in with a compound bow, I'm holding 10 pounds of compressive load. So for a traditional bow, the positions we put our body in are so much more important for the health of our shoulders and for accuracy and building consistent positions and, right? So you see a lot of people that can start with a compound bow and they'll kind of shove their shoulder down and they'll do a funky draw and they'll get that thing cracked over and they'll kind of like be able to like lift this up. Oh, okay. Now they're in a good position and they can shoot a 50-pound bow highly accurately. They can't draw that bow in any manner that doesn't involve contorting their body. And just name the weight. I just was talking about 50 because some people can draw it correctly at 50, but they can't at 55. And so then they get into the contortions. Whatever your bow you're drawing, you should be able to draw it with proper form that protects the health of your shoulders and puts the strain into big muscles, primarily all the muscles in your back. And I can go into that. And off the smaller muscles in your shoulder, off the smaller muscles that are attached to a very vulnerable joint, and put them into giant muscles in your back that aren't attached to a vulnerable joint. That's where we want the stress going. So even in the way we draw our bow, we want to use those back muscles. We want to use a motion that goes like this, not like this. We want it going like this, not like this. So these are very, very important elements to teach a brand new archer. So on that, let me ask you a question. So I don't know, what we wanted to do with this podcast. We kind of wanted to go start to finish and kind of see what a beginner's lesson's like, or just show the elements, some, discussion back and forth on, kind of shotgun some of the things we teach in what we're doing here. What's our design today?
Kind of, a little bit of both. I would like, here's my goal for this. I would like a start to finish kind of laid out. That way, if the person, say Logan is going to listen to this episode. He's going to be a fan of yours after this. I promise. He's a fan of everybody that comes on. He's going to listen to this. So somebody that's never shot, they can listen to this and kind of build an idea of, okay, what do I need to do if I don't have an instructor? But I also want this to be the dad listening that's, about to start getting their kid into shooting. Where should I start with my kid? Or
they're all great questions.
The neighbor that's about to get, the neighborhood kid who's saw him shooting. And for me with Logan, where do I start? How do you develop that? Because a lot of what I've done is instructing people and teaching people who have a background in compounds, shooting a recurve, which is just so comical. To your point, you shoot and you execute a perfect shot with your compound, and then you get your recurve and it's like you want to just like bend over halfway to the ground and pull back and let it rip. I'm like, no, like, what are you doing? The bow is the bow. Like you said, it's the same mechanics. It's the same execution. Only difference is you're holding more weight and it's in your fingers rather than on a release. Other than that, it's the same.
That's great, Dylan. That's one of the first things like that I ask the guys, like, what's your shooting experience? Oh, I shoot a compound. How well do you shoot a compound? You know, at what distance can you shoot a group like this? And they'll tell me. And if they're can shoot a group like this at 50, 60 yards or more, I'm like, okay, you're an accomplished compound shooter. Now I'm going to say something really simple. The things that you're doing with your compound need to be taken right to your recurve, because obviously you've learned a lot about archery. You're building good positions. You're executing the finish under a controlled movement, under a conscious movement. We need to take that to a recurve. You know, if your shot kind of looks like this with the compound on an index finger and you're pressing in your trigger, the trigger breaks and it pops, that's what we're going to do with the fingers. We're going to come in and build that same position. We're going to press direction and say they're shooting out of back tension in the same manner. But in this case, instead of letting go of our fingers, we're just going to press our fingers through the string to a finish position in the same exact manner that they're executing a back tension release, whether it's an index finger, whether it's a thumb button, a hinge, right? Or a tension release. We're going to have a movement that goes like this. We're going to use our back muscles because our back muscles are really strong and we can put very good fine motor control out of big muscles, not little teeny muscles, right? I don't want to execute that index finger release like this. I want to execute it like this with big muscles that can create a very slow, controlled movement. So I'll take that guy to the recurve and go, dude, we're going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
In fact, the good positions, and if you have a good tech, he's going to build your draw length correctly, so it gives you good skeletal alignment. We're going to do the same thing with the recurve, but it's way more important with the recurve. All right. So those are the same kind of talks I have with a guy that's, you know, a compound shooter as I do with a recurve shooter. If I've got the new compound shooter, I'm going to teach him what skeletal alignment's all about. I'm going to do the same things. I'm going to give him the press test. You remember when I put you in a holding position and I put one hand on your elbow and one hand on your front hand, and then I squish you together? The first thing like you're going to do with anybody you teach to is just like, give me an anchor. And a lot of people that are brand new, they don't know what an anchor point is. We got to tell them how to shape a hook, right? How it's going to shape and what it's going to look like. And we're going to tell them, hey, this bone right on the top of your index finger here, we need that to go to a bone. And that bone's going to be your cheekbone with a traditional bow. The Olympians are down here because they need a high launch angle because they shoot far away. But we shoot at moderate distances. So this little bone right here is going to stick to this cheekbone right here. We can look sideways and we're going to tuck it right under that cheekbone. We're just going to find a spot that's in the same exact spot every time. We're going to draw an anchor. We're going to tuck it right under that cheekbone. Same spot every time, right? Once we at least got that, because that's like a prerequisite to tell them to go like here. So I'm going to say, okay, come up and put that anchor in here. And they'll go like this. And I'll say, okay, get this elbow up, right? And then they'll have their arm out here. And I'll see all kinds of problems. This shoulder is going to be up. I need to get that shoulder down and level. If this shoulder's up, let's get my hand out of the way. This shoulder has to be down and level, right? So I'm going to get their shoulders low and level. I'm going to kind of turn them sideways and I'll just push their body into this position till we hit that end of range of motion. So now my shoulder is aligned to the back shoulder, the front shoulder to my front hand is all in the same alignment, all in line. And then their elbow is going to be out here. I'm going to say, take this up and back. And I just back and then I'll just push it till it stops like this, like leave this right here. And I'll push their elbow back and I'll just mold them into this position. And then I'm going to get a hand on their elbow and I'm going to get a hand on their front hand. I'm going to squeeze them straight together. And, you know, if they're a little out of line, I shove them into, this alignment and I'm going to squeeze them as hard as I can. It's going to feel like I'm squeezing on the end of a 2x4. And I'm going to go, relax. You don't even have to try. And I'll squeeze really hard and I'll go, oh, this is crazy. I don't even have to resist that. But then I'll say, that's what we're looking for in holding position. Now I'm going to get you out of alignment this far. So on that back elbow, I'm going to say, let's just move this elbow forward an inch. And I just create a little hinge on the backside. And I'll put that press on them again. And they're like, oh, and I go, you got to try now. Like, yeah, this is amazing. And I'll move it that inch back around and put that elbow back around behind the string. And I'll press them again and show them how strong that is. compared to just one little inch of misalignment.
You know what I found in this journey, which is funny because I pride myself in executing a good shot with my recurve. I've had two coaching times with you and Harv Ebers, Jim Willems, just spend a lot of time with guys trying to learn and grow, and do it right. And then I get on a compound and listen, there's no shame in my game. I'm a trigger puncher through and through, dude. That's how I grew up shooting. And so I just get back and just punch the trigger. And it's something that I have decided that it's time to break that down. It's time to just build a new shot from the ground up with my compound as well. But what I've learned through this process is, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of guys on their compound that have only shot compounds their whole life, I think their draw length is a half inch too short, maybe a full inch too short. Because when I started shooting a recurve, I'm like, why am I pulling it to 28.5 inches? I've always shot 27.5 inches. Then I move my compound to 28.5 inches and everything just settles back a little bit more and everything's better aligned. And now I started looking at people as they shoot and I'm like, hey, you need to move that out about a half inch. And they're like, no, dude, I've shot this my whole life. I'm like, just please trust me. It'll drop that front shoulder down and it'll pull everything back into alignment. It'll be so much more comfortable. You'll shoot 10 times more accurate. And so I've just found a lot of dudes, like I would challenge you to video yourself from above and behind and just see if you're in alignment. Because a lot of times if you lengthen that draw length a half inch to an inch, it's going to let you just come right back into alignment a whole lot better. And just like Tom's saying, you're going to realize, wow, that just feels so much more comfortable after all these years.
Can I support you in what you just talked about? Virtually everybody, almost everybody that comes into the shop with a bow set up elsewhere, we need to adjust the draw length to get alignment. So when we do this little press test with a compound shooter, let me show you what we're talking about. And I go through that process that we just showed you with creating a little misalignment between the shoulders and the front hand. And then, I did it on the back end first. We'll just move that elbow forward an inch. And then what I do on the next part of the press test is just let them turn in just a little. If they've got good alignment here, let me point at the camera. I just turn my shoulders in a little bit, just, maybe like an inch, like I said, just small amount because I want to make the point. So then they have to really fight this compressive load. And then I'll have them coil or twist their body around and hit that soft end of range of motion, put the press on them again, show them how strong it is. So show them the need, because you got to know why. If we're asking anybody to change anything, we need to show them why. Because if they've been shooting a long time, like you say, no, it's great, I feel cozy, they don't know it could be better. And so then we do this simple press test and say, this is the reason why we like to lengthen the draw length. I'm just fortunate because every one of our techs is an outstanding archery coach. They understand everything about the shot process and the biomechanics behind a good shot. So they set these bows up really well for people at proper draw lengths. In a recurve, we have to learn to do that ourselves.
Right.
If you've got a great tech, he'll do that for you.
Well, I get that question a lot of did learning how to shoot a recurve make you a better compound shot?
100%.
100%, because it makes you think about every part of your shot process. Every piece of the mechanics that go into your shot makes you think about all of that, because like you said, it's magnified 10 times because there's not a let off. I mean, if you don't roll that back shoulder over, you're just, you feel it after 3 shots. Why am I sore and tired? Well, you're fighting 50 pounds the whole time. You're not getting into alignment. And so, I've just after I have went down that journey of well, why is it that I pull my recurve? My clicker goes off at 28.5, but I've always shot compounds at 27.5. And I had a little bit of coaching. I was at a Total Archery Challenge, and Jay, one of the sales reps at Bear, phenomenal shooter. I finally said, hey, just watch me shoot. Walk me through some things with my compound shot. Break me down and tear me down and then build me back up, Yeah. And the first thing he said was, yep, let's go lengthen that. And I'm like, what do you mean?
Nice.
I've always shot 27.5.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, and you're crunched up. Like, we're going to go lengthen that.
You're
And
out
so
of
he takes it
alignment.
back and takes it to 28, and we go back and shoot. He's like, yeah, let's lengthen it some more. And I'm like, more? Like, and even then I was like, well, that's so uncomfortable for me at 28. But then we got to 28 and a half. And I was like, oh my gosh, everything just settled in. And it's like, why is it so comfortable now? You know? And then I thought, well, you idiot, you pull your recurve to 28 and a half because you've learned to rotate that back shoulder over and come into alignment. The same is true with your compound.
Yeah. So
I
what
think it's just
happened
something a lot
was
of guys need to look at.
you reduced muscular tension, and then you had a
Mhm.
calmer state of mind.
Yeah.
And then, so when we reduce muscular tension, we reduce mental tension, and that underlying need to get that arrow gone.
Yeah.
But so how much more critical is that with a recurve? It's greatly more critical, but it teaches you this that you can take to your compound.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm not a gun guy. You're listening to the Bear Archery Podcast. I'm a bow hunter. I enjoy archery. However, guns are a necessity for outdoorsmen. I need an everyday carry pistol. I need a shotgun to shoot birds with. I need a truck gun. I need a gun to shoot coyotes with. I need a lightweight gun to pack in the mountains if I'm on a bear hunt and need backup. There are times where I need a gun. And I am the type of guy, like I said, I don't study guns. I don't know a lot about guns. So when I'm in need of a gun, I just call somebody. My favorite place on earth has become Powder and String Outfitters in Wellington, Kansas. I love the creaky old floor, the rustic decor, the fact that they just take you back to a time where Main Street shops were experts in their trade. It's one of the best feelings walking into that place because you feel like you're walking back in time. Powder and String Outfitters has just launched an online website where you can shop the largest selection of in-stock guns and ammo that you will find anywhere, and the best prices guaranteed. Powderandstring.com. Guys, here's my favorite part. Call them. Ask them questions. Ask them, tell them what you're looking for in a gun, what you want to get out of it, what you want to use it for, and they're going to point you in the right direction. How do I know that? Because I have to do that every time I need a new gun. So guys, go to powderandstring.com for your next gun, for your ammo, for your clips, for all of your hunting accessories, trail cameras, tree stands. They've got it all. They've got archery equipment too, but they are my gun experts that I trust, that I go to all of the time when I've got questions about guns. Powderandstring.com. Go check them out. You can shop online. You can figure it all out. The guns will ship straight to your house. It's an incredibly easy process to go through. Guys, they've got everything you could ever need. Powderandstring.com.
So what, and we're going to jump back to the beginner, I promise. To the person listening to this who shot a compound their entire life and they think, well, I've always shot 28 and a half. What can they do? How would they know on their own, without coaching, without, flying to Denver? How can they know if their draw length needs to be brought out a half inch?
Well, it's really hard to know that. Otherwise, what I would suggest is that press test that I'm kind of talking about, and I've done it to you. They need somebody to squeeze them and then check their alignment. I mean, if they've got somebody with a wide enough wingspan to compress them straight together in these positions, well, that's better. Shoulders low and level, scapula's retracted, your shoulders back and down, right? That would be one way. A stretch band, just especially if you can get it heavy enough, get in here and feel the load, and then get to here and feel the load, and then get to here and feel the load.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a way. We've got to get compressive load on that body between the front hand and the rear elbow. We've got to get compressive load on it so you can feel the difference.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I've kind of I'd never had that question to me before. Like, if you don't have me, if you don't, how would you know? So I'm kind of I'm kind of thinking, well, on the fly, we've got to replicate compressive load. So if you've got a partner with a wingspan enough to really compress you like that, we need to do that. We need to get that elbow up an inch forward, and then we need to get it back to more of an end of range of motion. Feel it there. Just having somebody squeezing on you. I'm telling you, when you have perfect alignment, you don't have to put any effort in, and that person cannot collapse you. I can get a little lady that weighs 90 pounds and is 5 foot nothing, and I get her in alignment. There's no way I can budge her, compressing her. Now, the effect on a bow is not that dramatic, because in this position that we're demonstrating this on, it would be like the string was in the middle of our chest. The string is going to be forward, so we're not going to have an exactly straight line. We're going to have a bit of a triangle, you know? So from the line, you know, from your elbow, if it's back here, your triangle is going to be very narrow. The point of the triangle would maybe be the point of your elbow. And we take the elbow forward, well, that triangle of your body just got wider. And so that got more, more leverage on your body, right? But there's still a magnificent difference between being in good alignment, even though that string's not in the middle of our chest, it's out here. It's just not as dramatic as, straight, like compression straight through the middle of your chest, but it's hugely important. So learning about alignment is the first critical key to teaching a new archer.
Yeah. And that's something that I think, you use the word alignment perfectly. Even just having a wife or a friend video you, or just say like, hey, your back elbow is inside. It's not a straight line. Everything should be in a straight line to that target. So if you rotate that back shoulder over, everything would be in a straight line. But just having they don't even have to know anything about archery, but just to be able to say, well, no, that elbow is not inside. That's out of alignment. Or you're collapsing a little bit, people can look at that, just anatomically see what's going on, even if they don't know anything about archery. But what I have found is videoing from above. So if I just set my phone on the back deck, and video down, if I shoot, go down and shoot beneath the deck, but the phone is above me, I can literally draw a line. Like I can take like just an app, and put a line over me and see if everything is in alignment. And I'm like, well, no, I need to roll that back shoulder over a little bit. Well, in order to do that, I'm going to have to make my draw length a quarter inch longer on my compound. So I do that. I go back and shoot again. I'm like, whoa, that back shoulder rolled over. I'm holding it better. I'm holding it stronger. I took all the pressure off. I also think you're just going to notice it. Like if you just go out and try it, say, I don't have anybody to look at me, and you go out and try it and say, oh, I'm going to make it a half inch longer at first. And then you pull your bow back, you draw it back, and you're like, oh my gosh, it feels so much more comfortable. Mm-hmm. My head is in better alignment. I don't have to lower my head to get to a string. Everything's fitting better. Just try it.
We got a guy yesterday. He came in for a recurve lesson, but I said, bring your compound so we can, check you out. He came down from Canada and he brought his compound because he went to one of the tack shoots. So his draw length was short. And so it made him, he was shooting a hinge. It made him lean his head way forward to get his nose on the string, right? Like you need some more draw length so we can get your chin level and we can have a good position and get rid of all that neck strain and that hinged up position.
Well, that's what I tell people too. Like I did this yesterday with a guy. He shot his whole life. And I just said, listen, just come back to full draw, eyes closed, keep your eyes closed and keep your head perfectly straight up and down. Don't put your head into it. Come back to full draw, come to anchor.
Yeah. Keep it centered.
And I'm like, all right, well, the string is still a half inch from your nose. Like, so if we just lengthen your draw length, he's like, well, I've always shot 29 inches. I'm like, but if we make it 29 and a half, that's going to roll that back shoulder over and that it's just going to come into better head alignment. And you're not going to have to fight all the time to see your peep sight. And so he did that and he's like, oh my gosh, it just feels so much better.
I'm going to throw one caveat on here, Dylan.
Yeah.
Structurally, especially with old injuries, sometimes the ideal alignment is not available to a person's body. Okay. I just have to throw that caveat in there because I don't want to beat a horse that's dead trying to push somebody into what a textbook position is if they can't do it. For instance, if you've had an old neck injury, there's no way you can coil sideways to the shoulder alignment and comfortably look over your hand because you don't have the neck flexibility. we're going to have to open up the chest and have a diminished position. Oh, well, we make that one consistent. You see what I'm saying? My son, Dan, has had 9 shoulder surgeries. Okay. He was a Division I wrestler. 8 of those surgeries are from wrestling either as a competitor or as a coach. One of them was because somebody put a big rock in the middle of a trail and he looked away. Somebody's honking a horn. He was conditioning on this concrete trail beside a road. Somebody honked and he looked over and didn't see the rock about this big in the middle of the trail, hit it, tweaked his tire sideways, went over the handlebars and reached out and dislocated it out the back. So one of those was from a non-wrestling injury. But anywho, the way that they've tied that shoulder up with 4 or 5 surgeries on this one, he's had 5 on one and 4 on the other, for crying out loud, poor kid. The way they've tied that up, he cannot come into this position without feeling very vulnerable. And we found this out because I'm like looking at him, and he can shoot a dang Copenhagen can at 60 yards with a broadhead. So he's a tremendous shooter. I'm like, Dan, I think that you could be even better if you had a little better alignment. And so we try to get him into alignment. And he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like that shoulder feels like it's going to pop out. And I say, don't do that. Then you're just fine. Sometimes mechanically, structurally, the quote ideal position is not available to you. So that's a one caveat. And it's a low percentage of people, but we have to account for that when it happens. So if you're one of those people that doesn't have the neck flexibility to comfortably look over your hand when your shoulders are aligned to your front hand, well, we're going to have to open that chest up so you don't have to turn your head as far.
Yeah.
We get it. So I just want to throw that in there for folks because you have to coach or start with the body you have. And that includes flexibility, mobility, old injuries. Just want to throw that in there on top of what we're talking about today.
So taking a step back to the beginner, walk me through just first steps. Okay. I mean, what
the very first step?
I've never shot a bow before in my life.
The very first step, I'm going to talk about this position, the holding position, the most important position. That's what we're going to learn first. And so first step is I'm going to teach them about how to make a hook for the string. And I'm going to use terms like make it easy. We're not going to just throw this. Let's make a bear claw. We're going to kind of stiffen our wrist and pull that thumb and pinky down, right, towards the inside of your wrist. We're going to extend those front fingers out. We don't want a hook that looks like this. And there's a whole lot of finger that's got to get out of the way. Let's just shove them along to begin with. There's very little finger that has to get out of the way, right? And so then I'm going to talk about where to anchor like I talked before. And then I'm just going to mold them in. While I'm molding them into them, I'm shoving their elbow into alignment, right? And I'm kind of twisting their body to get their shoulders aligned with their hand, right? I'm just kind of moving around and I'm talking about those components. See, I want your shoulders level. They've got one up. I'll like, no, let's get that down,
And this is all without a bow. This is just them literally doing this.
Yeah, I'm literally molding them into the place, but I'm talking about how I'm molding. I want your shoulders down. I want this elbow back here. See how it just turns and it just stops? That's where I want it. See how you turn your body and it just stops? That's where I want you. I'm just talking generalities. I'm molding them in this position. And then I do the press test. And they're going like, holy mackerel. There's a huge difference in strength and stability and calmness between whether I've got good alignment or when I'm just a little bit hinged up. And so that establishes credibility. It establishes credibility of the position I'm trying to teach them. Okay, now we're going to learn the process of building that position. So let's just set a basic stance under you. A basic stance means your feet are at shoulder width. Your hips are centered in between your feet. And your shoulders are centered over your hips and your head's in the middle. And we turn our head. There's a basic stance. I won't put them even. We'll take that front foot back about 3 inches or so. Basic stance. Now I'll tell them I don't want to arch up when I'm pulling the bow back. I want to keep a little tension right here. I don't want to let this all tip back because we got 8 pounds up here that unbalances you when you arch your back. That 8 pounds goes that way and you're floating in the wind. So I want this structure to be tight. So put a little tension in your core, like suck your sternum in a little bit. All right. There's basic stance. And then we're going to knock an arrow. I'm going to teach them how to knock an arrow efficiently. I can't tell you how many people today are in my range going like this and messing around trying to find this thing, and twisting it, and there's this all floating in the air to get that knock on. And I'm going to go grab the arrow by the knock where you can twist it. And we're going to set this down on the rest. I'm going to put my hand, looking at my camera, I'm going to put my hand inside the string here. I can feel where the knock set is. I'm just going to pull that back and snap it on. And I want to snap. And I did that without looking at it because I can feel it all. But this is so much more efficient to put the arrow on the wrist, put your hand inside the string, turn your hand over a little bit so that I can just snap this on the string with my fingers. Boom. Right? So we knock an arrow. That is a step in the archery shot sequence, but I just want to make it easy for them instead of fishing for the string like this, right? And then we just go through the sequence, you know. Next, I get this arrow. I'm going to set our hook. We're going to make this bear claw looking thing. And I'm always going to teach them 3 under. We can go split finger later if we're shooting really long distance. But I'm going to set the hook and I'm going to slide it up. At first, I'm going to put it right in the finger grooves. I'm not going to complicate it with exact string placement and tension distribution. I'm just going to tell them, don't pull hard at all with your bottom finger. Let that one be real loose. That's the only thing I'm going to tell them. And make a hook. All right. Then I'm going to teach them how to make their grip. We don't want to grab a bow like a handshake. We want to take our hand, like we were saying, stop, and we're going to slide it up to the web of the thumb on the grip. And we're going to set, trying to get an angle for you guys, I'm going to set the thumb pad down on the bow and wiggle it until the left side of that handle is right against that lifeline. I don't want to be past. I don't want to be shy. It's going to be right along that. I want to notice when you do this way, your knuckles are going to be out here at a 45-degree angle. And I'm just going to put the thumb pad on the bow and align that left side of the bow with that line right there. When your knuckles are at a 45-degree angle, that line is vertical. If I come down here and try to grab the bow again, I'm going to cross that line, and that's going to be an indicator. My knuckles are going to be vertical again. Knuckles at 45, find that spot in the middle. Let's get this string out of the way, set that thumb pad on. And then I'm just going to put my finger on the front part of the bow, or maybe 2, and I'm not going to squeeze it. And I'm going to let the wrist be really limp. Because why I'm teaching all this is I don't want them to twist the bow. When we pull the string back, it's really easy to get the string out of alignment with the limbs. But if we have that loose grip, the string always stays right in the middle of the limbs. I want that string to stay right in the middle of the limbs, because if we clamp on this, we pull this out of alignment, when we shoot the arrow, the bow's going to twist. It's called bow torque, right? There's lots of torques and rotational motions in what we do, but this isn't one of them we want, right? So hook, set your hook. Then with a little tension on the string, set my grip. And then set my shoulders down. We have this position. And then we're going to lift this all up. Last thing, I'm going to take this string about 3 inches outside the string. And then I'm going to lift it up to about nose height. And then I'm going to do 2 motions. One of the motions is I'm going to coil sideways. And one of the motions is I'm going to shove my shoulder back. And that's going to draw the bow. So when I draw the bow, I'm not going to just pull it straight back. I'm going to come from that 2 to 3 inches outside that I talked about. And I'm going to shove that shoulder back, and it's going to come into anchor, right? When I shove my shoulder back, I'm actually using my back muscles. I'm actually retracting my shoulder blade. I don't know if you could see that. So I'm going to teach them to draw the bow correctly right off the get-go. I'm going to put them that tension in the back right in the very first beginner archery. So I'm going to just help turn sideways, and we're going to grab a stretch band to learn this, or a bow like this, right? It's 5 or 7 pounds. And I'm going to get it up here, and we're going to come in, and we're going to find that anchor. If I have to finish off this little coil to get my shoulders in line with the arrow, I finish it off, and then I do a motion here, transfer a hold. Now I've built my position. Now I'll check them. We got to get that shoulder down. We're going to go back and revisit it. We want to do a movement like this, probably in the air, where we shove the shoulder down and we just scoop that up and see how that shoulder stayed down. Athletes, people who have worked hard, when they lift anything, their upper trap's engaged. So they lift the bow up and up the shoulder comes. Right? So we're just going a step by step. Basic stance. Knock an arrow. Set your hook. Right? Set the grip. Set your shoulders down. Take this string out here about 2-3 inches and make your form align right with the arrow. I know the arrows will be pointing left. That's fine. Take the bow right up the line of the target. come in and find your anchor and kind of just turn sideways and finish this thing off. Rotate this elbow around here, rotate your body around here till we hit an end of range of movement. Bam, there's your holding position, right? We do a lot of that with stretch bands. Stretch band, as you pull back, increases weight, so it replicates a bow. So I can get them here to here to here to here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, once I've kind of shown them that, I said, okay, how do we get rid of the arrow? I gotta teach them a little something about using their back, but I can't go into the deep biomechanics because I got 20 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, really, to release the arrow, we never want to open our fingers. The brain will figure out how to get rid of the string. So I'm going to build a visualization for them. I'm going to have them trace their face like this, and I'm going to help them. I'm going to kind of push the elbow. I'm going to I want you to press backwards behind your body that way. You know, I'm going to press back, and then I'm going to let this rotate through and trace your face to a spot over your shoulder and say, look back at it. Okay, now let's visualize a golf ball or something back there, a landing spot for your follow through. And so I'm going to say, okay, and I'll get them to just swing that over to that spot. Like, we're going to snag that ball with these hook fingers. We're not going to open them up. We're just going to swing this back in the same direction that this movement went and snag that ball. And in the next order of business, once I get them to make that movement correctly.
And the same should be exactly true with your compound. Exactly.
The draw that I teach in a beginner is the same. We bring this up here. Our chest is very open to the target. We have a very short brace height with a compound. We do not want to reach up. Boy, you're gonna hurt your shoulder reaching up. So we open our chest up because we have a very short brace height. We open our chest up and we take it up here. We maybe even put a little rotation on it, get it up to here, and we do two motions together. We twist our body, which separates our hands. Let me move a little bit. Just twisting my body separates my hands. So we're kind of using some core muscles to crack that bow over. And then we're going to also shove the shoulder back, all from a position of low shoulders. Like this, with compound, same thing. It's more of a higher level with the recurve. We can kind of raise and coil at the same time, pre-draw, right?
For sure.
We can't do that with a compound because all the load is up in front. The
Right.
recurve, all the load's in the back. So with a recurve, we can do this and kind of preset our shoulders even before we draw the bow. Compound, we can't. We need to coil and do this together. If we can't do that and keep our shoulders in good position, low position, you're overbowed.
Yeah.
If you have to do all these contortions, you know, or you're overbowed. Start with a lighter bow, because if you're a hunter, you don't want these contortions. You want to be like this. Boom, you're done. Least amount of movement possible. For a practical matter, for a bow hunter, that's good enough. But if you're a target archer, you don't need to be shooting 60 pounds. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're a target archer, there's no reason to be worried about your bow weight. So let's get a bow weight where we can do this form properly and not hurt yourself. Right?
Yeah.
So, anywho, I start with a fixed cord to teach them how to release the arrow. Let me find a fixed cord. Oh, I have one with a D-loop. We're practicing releasing a compound through, but it'll work for my fingers. I think it's close enough to my draw length. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have them catch that ball in a very, very rapid speed. They're going to keep their fingers curled because they're going to snag that golf ball. It's a visualization. It just helps learn this thing. And so they're just going to like press that shoulder back, which is going to add tension to the string. So they're going to increase that tension and do a very rapid speed movement to snag that ball. Go. Notice that my fingers didn't open. They actually did, but boop. If you were to look at it closely, you wouldn't even see my fingers open. But they do. And the first couple might be snaggy. Like, that's okay. Your brain has to learn to make that release, and it will. You cannot figure it out. That release comes from the part of the brain that's the reflexive part of the brain. That's the part of the brain that, not the thinking brain. That's the prefrontal cortex or executive function. This comes from the reflexive, automatic part of the brain. That automatic part of the brain is the one that accommodates that string getting through your fingers. It shoots a signal to your flexors for a moment of relaxation, at which time the string pops through. You can't figure that out because it comes from the reflexive part of the brain. This comes from the conscious part of the brain. It doesn't come from that part of the brain. So don't try to figure it out. Just let the brain figure it out. So anyways, we just do it a few times until that is smooth like that. And, there's a lot of this. No, you're pushing that way instead of pressing that way. There's little corrections to be made. But if you'll just catch the ball, it's just this thing that's magic because the direction of movement is that way, kind of behind you. Your brain engages the back muscles like automatically.
Mm-hmm.
Because we'll aim and then catch the ball, we're separating the jobs. Aim doesn't mean shoot. Aim just means aim. You just look at it. And I use the analogy like driving a car. At first, all the steering was done consciously, and then it evolves into where your brain makes a link between the cars over here, I got to do this, cars over here, I got to do this, because we consciously react to that for a while. And then the brain picks up that connection to the car being over here and making a conscious adjustment to it. And then the reflexive part of the brain picks that connection up and does it for you. And all of a sudden there's little micro adjustments made and you're not even doing it. And then you don't have to think about it anymore. You can have a deep conversation with your passenger. So I put these analogies in to understand. We put the aim consciously on the target, and we haven't talked about aiming yet. And then we just look at it. It's like looking over the hood of the car down the middle of the highway. The brain will keep the aim for you, which allows us to come back here and finish the shot. So the catch the ball drill kind of does that by accident for them. I don't have to go into that mental management stuff because we're going to aim, and then we're going to, in a very isolated movement, catch the ball. So I get them to do it because the brain will learn it really fast on a fixed chord, pow. And when we get that done, I bring them to a stretch band. And you lock that in, and then I'm going to press it through. And I'm going to say, make your body like a shooting statue. This is the only thing moving, right? So I'm going to come in here, press that into the end of range of motion. We're going to let it settle, and we're going to press through. So I get them to where they execute something that looks like this. You're ready for the bow now. And then I put a bow in their hand, and they've got an arrow nock, and we go through that shot sequence, and I'll lead them through it. I'll even lift their hands up together with mine, right? I'll just, I got that archer. I'll cradle this with my forearm, and I'll just cradle everything, and I'll lift it up for them. See how this all moves together. We don't do this or get it all out of whack. We just move it up together. We come in and find our anchor. We kind of rotate in to the ends of ranges of movement. Then we aim whatever. We can just point it at the middle of the target at first. And then we catch the ball or follow through to that follow through position. There's what the 20-minute lesson involves. Now we're going to add a name. We get this process down, and you'll notice the arrows start grouping together. Now we put a name on it. We explain to them what's going on. The vision is on this line. The arrow nock is down here at your anchor, so the arrow's pitched up. So if we look at just the tip and line the tip up on this plane, but the arrow's launching upward, we're going to hit above the target, right? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
The launch angle's from down here. The vision's from up here. This intersects the tip straight to the bullseye, but the arrow's down here. So when vision intersects the tip at the bullseye, it's going to launch above where the tip is. So we have to develop a gap. We have to aim under the target to hit the target. Because literally, if we're looking at the tip, it's going to launch up. So we have to put the tip below, and we have to find the place below to launch right up into the bullseye. So we're teaching the fundamentals of a gap or an aiming gap. And so we'll just pick a spot, and we'll just have that person that now has a repeatable process say, put the arrow on the bullseye. And just let it settle there, and then aim. That aim didn't mean shoot. Follow through. Okay, just do the process. So put the arrow tip on the bullseye, and now just look at the bullseye. Don't try to control the tip, and then follow through. And if they'll do that, they'll produce a group. Say that group is a foot high. Well, guess what? At that range, we have to put the tip a foot low to hit the bullseye. So once I get a group, we start making the aiming adjustments. Okay, now come in here, put the tip a foot low. Now just look at the bullseye. It's like looking over the hood of the car. The hood of the car isn't in line with your vision to the middle of the lane. If we look at the tip, it'd be like trying to aim the car based on a hood ornament. Not very good control. We'd be trying to control it all the time. We look over the hood of the car, put that arrow tip a foot below, look over the hood of the car at the bullseye, and then different job, follow through.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they start hitting around the bullseye, and that's getting exciting. If we get a left side group, I said, okay, we just got to take the head and the bow over so we get your eye in line with the bullseye. You have to experiment with where it's at and kind of look along the whole arrow. And when you can see the whole line of the arrow in line with your eye to the bullseye, that's the amount of tip over you need. Let it sit there, follow through. And all of a sudden it moves into the middle after a little bit of experimentation. I'm like, holy mackerel, we can have them on the target the first day like this. It's exciting as all get out. They get some satisfaction because we just learned a skill with several different components and they're hitting the middle, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And then what you'll see is under your supervision, they're going to kind of be doing it perfect. And you got to walk away and let them make their mistakes because they have to get used to this thing that's an odd tool in their hands, right? And just let them shoot for a while. And then they'll do some things wrong and this will degrade to this and, or this and and then you come back and we just kind of refocus on the things and maybe on the stretch band again and make it perfect, right? Maybe they're kind of hulking it up and shooting, and we start calming all that things down. We make corrections, and they just learn more. That's your 20-minute lesson right there, basically.
Do you give them like a list of verbal cues, like to work through as you work through a shot? I know mine. I used to call it gasp with a silent H. So I would do my grip, I would do my hook, I would come to anchor, I would switch to holding just because it worked better for the analogy instead of transfer to holding, and then pull, and
pull.
There's pull through. But I also wanted to ask you: so, do you give them any verbal cues like that? Do you give them that process to work through every time?
Yes, as I'm doing it, as we're learning, because I'm sitting there watching them shoot arrows, and so I'm repeating that sequence. Okay. I see their basic stance is done. I'm not going to say get your basic stance because they go there, you're good.
Yeah.
And they knock an arrow. I'm not talking about if they knock it efficiently, you're good. All right. And then I'll start the verbal cues or the verbal sequence. Set your hook. No, let's stretch those fingers out a little bit. I'll make little corrections. Okay. Now set your grip. Oh, see how you're crossing the line a bit? Pull your knuckles out a little more and get it aligned. So I'm making a little corrections, little tweaks as we do that. Set your hook. Now set your grip. Now set your shoulders down. Now, especially for women, rotate this elbow so that this joint is vertical and it bends this way, not so it's like this and bends this way, right? Super important for women. Better check on that right here. Rotate your elbow. If they can't do it and their shoulder comes with it, I take them to a table and we just secure their hand on a table and then we rotate it and get their brain neural muscle connection to twisting it. And we come back again and we get that elbow turn. Set your shoulders down. Lift it up to nose height. Now coil, and we've practiced this with a stretch banner that's 5-pound bow already. Coil and find your anchor. All right. And then, don't forget, tap this around, hit your end of range motion. Coil sideways all the way. Get that elbow around. Okay, there we go. But they've already done it with a stretch banner or a 5-pound bow. All right.
Yeah.
Now I'm standing behind them, and if I want them to kind of hit the middle, I'll say a little higher. I say, okay, right there. Now follow through or catch the ball. It's kind of the sequence as it goes. So what do you do the next shot? Set your hook, set your grip, set your shoulders down, raise it to nose height, find your anchor, coil into range of motion. There's your aim. Press string tension through your finish. Okay, next shot. And I'm tweaking though. Each one of those little steps, I'm making little adjustments to, a little corrections. So they're learning more. Repetition is how we learn. What do I do the next one? Set your hook, set your grip, set your shoulders down. Well, make sure you get that elbow, right? Look at the target, raise it up to nose height. Come in here and find your anchor and coil around to your ends of range of movement. There's your aim. Press through. I'm just repeating. This is a basic shot sequence.
Yeah.
There's a million details, not a million. there's lots of details to refine every bit of this. But we're beginners, man. I don't want to load them up. It's that simple. Set your hook, set your grip, set your shoulders down. Make sure your elbow's right. Raise up the nose height, get into anchoring, what we call transfer to hold. Set a name on the target, let it settle, follow through.
And again, all of this is exactly applied with a compound. And I used to think like, well, no, there's no hook. You still have to hold your release
There's
in
no
the
hook.
same way every time.
Yeah.
You know, if you're shooting a thumb button, you quite literally have a hook
Yeah.
on your thumb button. And so you have to be
Looking to see if I had a
thinking
compound
about
release here. Yeah. Set a hook
all
on
of those
the D
things
loop.
the same.
Set a
Yeah.
hook on the D loop.
So
Set your hook.
my last question I have for you, and this kind of goes into just personal where I'm at my shot right now. I had a guy tell me, and he's a very accomplished shooter. I don't know that he's done much coaching, but he's a very, very good shooter.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying, Dylan, you want to be doing as much pushing towards the target as you are pulling from the target to execute your shot.
Correct.
He's like, you can get away with murder back here if you're just pushing towards the target. So is there any truth to that? Because we always talk about, everybody that does coaching talks about, you know, rotating that back shoulder and pulling through your shot. They never talk about pushing through your shot. So how do you marry the two, you know, the push pull, what percentage? I mean, just kind of walk me through that a little bit. Cause that's kind of where I'm at in my shot process right now.
It is something I talk about all the time, but not at first.
Okay.
There's so many things within just that shot sequence I told you to learn that I don't want to complicate it with all the nuance to an archery shot. But anybody accomplished at all, I'm going to definitely address what I call balancing your tension. All right.
Okay.
We want as much tension pushing to the target as pressing through your release.
That's good.
So what I find that's most helpful for this is to set the front shoulder up correctly in the first place. That shoulder has to be secured down and back. It has to be sitting right, like we don't want any of this tissue stretch in any way. If you put Mr. Atlas in two hydraulic presses, the first thing that would crack, it wouldn't be his elbows or wrists, these shoulders would pop up. It's a weak spot in this chain of compressive load, right? So anyways, if this is up, when you pull here, this is drifting further and stretching those tissues more and potentially causing damage more, right? So this position of the front bow arm has to be a beam that all this compressive load is sitting on. It has to be a solid beam up here. So when we set that up, like at first with like that little precoil and load those lats up and lift it up, or at least set that shoulder down here and lift it up so that shoulder doesn't rise, and then engage that lat down and push at the target, and then come into our business. And once I hit transfer hold, and I'll do this with blind bail. So I was like, close your eyes. We go up to 5 feet from the target, close your eyes. I want as much going that way as I have this way, right? So I call it balancing your tension. So you asked about a ratio. 50-50 is really good. Because at your level of shooting, we have to force this at first. At your level of shooting, I want longer intensity on this press, or longer duration on this press, and lower intensity. We're not forcing anything. It's a very static looking position here, because I'm going to, with a little bit longer duration, I'm going to press through. Now, the follow through at that point becomes just like if we were playing tug of war, you would just fall back. When this string goes away, boom, and we're pressing in this direction, it just falls back like the tug of war. At first, for the brand new archer, we are forcing that follow through so that we can teach the brain to get rid of the string without thinking about it. So we're literally forcing it through at first. That stays that way for a bit, and then it gets more subtle as they learn to shoot. And so this might be press at first, high speed, remember? I want it to go fast because I don't want you to think about opening your fingers. So I don't want to give you time to open your fingers. I want to force it through there and force the brain to make a connection to shoot that signal to your flexors to get rid of the string, right? That's the subconscious release, by the way. I'm going to force it through. Over time, you know, from press through, it's going to go to press through. Eventually, I'm going to cut to the chase. press through. Very low intensity, nothing, no visible movement. The shot breaks, and because we're pressing against that, it just falls that way. The arrow's so far off the bow before any visible movement happens. There's no visible movement. The string goes away, boop, and the arrow is way off the bow before you see any movement, and then you just see a follow through as inertia takes that glenohumeral rotation. Inertia just takes it there. So we analyze a lot. We use this follow through as a diagnostic tool eventually.
Yeah.
If this thing's popping like this, we know our scapula is high and we got a little opposing tension. If this thing's going this, we have we're pulling our elbow down. We want to be pressing it straight back and we want linear tension on the string, because all the pressures to the bow have to be straight to the target and straight away from the target. And the only way to do that properly is this actually a rotational motion that turns into a linear pressure. And when it goes away, that hand stays in a very linear manner to a place over your shoulder. The elbow slashes down and around. We don't try to make it slash down. It just does, because we got full retraction on the scapula, and then the humerus just rotates through the joint. Your scapula never moves from right there. It's just this upper arm bone rotates around, which drags this hand because of the folding angle in a linear fashion. To get fancy about it, I don't want to get overcomplicated there, but that's what we're after. We want all the pressures to the bow to be linear, right to the target and right away from the target. Now, we use lots of rotations to create that. And there's some rotations, like in the grip, we don't want. There's some rotations or torques here we don't want. But what we want is linear pressure to the target and straight away from the target. That's the simple goal. And we use all these biomechanics to create that.
I absolutely love a good conversation with Tom Clum. Like, it's one of my favorite things maybe ever. Because it's these things that, like, I'm working out in my head and I'm like, all right, I need to be pushing towards the target and pulling away. And then you use analogies and say things, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I've been trying to do. I just didn't know how to say it. And so I love these conversations. I love every time I speak to you, I just learn something new about archery. Guys, I would highly encourage you.
That I don't want to forget. Ahead. Okay. So you talked about cues, right? Cues are the way to think of making an action happen. You cue it. It prompts it. It promotes it. Hits the go button on the motor program. It's, a definition of a cue. How we think to make the movement. Here's the thing that newer coaches don't understand sometimes, that the way that I think of making this perfect movement, or what the cue is in my head, how to drive this perfect movement, that may not make a light bulb go off for you. As an experienced coach, I have to know 5 or 6 ways to describe how to make this action happen. Now, over time, you develop like, oh, this is an 80%er. If I teach people to cue off the shoulder, like press the shoulder back, it creates that. Some people cue off the elbow and they want like push the elbow that way. That's a very external cue. Some people cue off. U.S. Archery likes cueing off the back of the arm, which they call land 2, and pressing land 2 behind you. I get real internal and press the shoulder back. The act of pressing my shoulder back makes that happen. So that's a good cue. Elite level people, they cue right at the scapula level a lot of times. Super internal cue, right? It moves way inside the body. I've had a famous archer, he says, I'm really connected to my back through my index finger. There's no connection to your back through an index finger. They're totally different. But that cue makes him feel a little pressure on top finger, makes him cue into a feeling that really gets him into that position. That cue is for him. I don't recommend higher top finger pressure. If that cue worked for you, awesome, right? So you have to, we want to create a position and a movement. And different people are going to have to think different words to create that position and that movement. That's a caveat here when I talk about coaching. If you're a coach, you say, do it this way because this makes it work for me. Know that might not work for the guy you're teaching. You have to word it in a different way to create the movement or the direction of movement or the position you want. You have to learn different ways to word things. And that's really an important thing for these budding newer coaches. It's like start getting a giant vocabulary of how you describe how to do these things. That makes sense? I just wanted to add that
Absolutely.
in before I forgot. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, it was great. No, I was just saying, guys, like, don't just take this conversation and say, wow, I've learned a lot from Tom. His courses they go so much deeper. And I would encourage you, if you're just starting out, take the basics course, which is everything Tom talked about here. But you're going to get to watch him, and do it with a bow, and you can do it along with him. I've looked like a straight up goober standing in front of my computer with a bow in my hands, following along with Tom. However, it's those types of things that make the world of difference. So, Tom, where can they find all of your courses at?
Okay. You can find it off of our RMS Gear website, rmsgear.com, excuse me. Or we can just go to Shoot Solid, all one word, shootsolid.com. I have a $50, all my courses are one-time purchases. I have a $50 basics course, like 12 or 13 modules, 35 minutes or so in total. And it walks you through this whole sequence. And now we have more visual guys shooting a bow, including aiming methods, developing this holding position. How do we execute the finish? How do we aim it? It just walks you through step by step throughout the shot sequence. That's the one to start with. I have a Solid Archery Mechanics course. It's over 7 hours long. It goes into elite detail on every nuance to this stuff. It's got 6 years worth of Q&As on it that clarify things that you might not be clarified. If you doesn't clarify it, you can write a question I answer them on the site. It's a one-time purchase. It lives on the computer. Anywhere you can get on your phone or an iPad or a computer and get to the internet, this course is available to you. I have what's called an advanced course. Don't buy that one yet. That one's going to get integrated into the main course. The people that have bought that main course will just get it with no charge, but it's 4 hours long, and I'm going to redo it and make it. I did it a year and a half ago. I explain things so much better now. And I want to put some training protocols with it, like an actionable thing to do after each module. So that will be some time. But if you buy the main course now, you're going to get that. Don't buy the advanced course yet. I'm gonna pull it off into the guys that already bought it. I'm gonna compensate them in some way, which have been very few so far. But once you do the basics course, if you buy the main course, the basics course is included. But if you don't want to get in that deep on 7 hours of instruction, buy the basics course. Honestly, it's got everything you need to become a really good archer. It goes through this stuff.
It does.
You can always call me at the shop. Just call RMS Gear at the shop. You can always ask me a question. I'm on Instagram, Tom_Clum, CLUM_senior. You just put Tom Clum in there. I'm sure it'll pop up. I do a lot of little instructional things on there. Some of them are 401 tips because we're talking about string torque and we talk about correction. Some are 101 stuff, and including a lot of events and just stuff we talk about related to the business or my family. Some of that, and then we have a webcast. Just search YouTube for RMS Gear. Where Tommy and I have 4 episodes out, and we're going to talk about Q&As and live film and shot analysis and answer questions too. So there's lots of ways to access me. I want to put as much free information out there. I don't want you to have to pay for a thing. I don't tease you. I'll teach you exactly how to do it, like in this venue with you, Dylan, which I love to do. But if you all want it in one place in order, you can buy the basics course for $50 or jump into the main course. It's a $200 purchase, lifetime purchase. You can do those if you would like to. I'm going to try to get you all the information anyway. I'm not hiding a thing. I don't do teasers. I'm here to help. So I have different outlets that we do this on. Yours is an awesome one, obviously, because we'll reach a lot of people and hopefully help a lot.
Guys, if you're a traditional archer and you have not checked out Three Rivers Archery, what are you waiting for? Three Rivers Archery is your one-stop shop for all things traditional archery. They have the largest in-stock selection of traditional archery equipment anywhere. Same-day shipping, very, very, very knowledgeable. Listen, I use Three Rivers all the time. If I've got a question on tuning, if I've got a question on broadheads, if I've got a question on brace height or anything like that, I use Three Rivers for everything. They know the products because they use the products. Three Rivers Archery is by far the gold standard when it comes to traditional archery. So, guys, If you're just getting into traditional archery, I would encourage you to use Three Rivers as a resource for knowledge and understanding and growing and learning, and as a place to get all those products that you're going to be needing as you take this journey.
Yeah, guys, I would highly encourage you to go check them out. Go check out RMS gear. They have everything you need in traditional archery, as well as you guys have heard me talk in depth a lot about the cutthroat broadheads. I've shot several animals with those now, and they just are phenomenal. Those are Tom's broadheads, single bevel broadhead, razor sharp, hold a blade, fantastic,
and 3 blades. Don't forget.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and 3 blades. Just phenomenal heads. So go check out RMS gear. Go check out Cutthroat. Go check out Solid Archery Mechanics. Go find Tom on social media. You absolutely need to. He's one of my favorite guys just to listen to because he articulates so well about archery. And so make sure and find Tom, find RMS, find Solid Archery Mechanics. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Y'all have a fantastic week.
Thank you.